Oh man, I've been waiting for this my whole life. We're in Jordon now, and we're about to rent a car. We got a really good deal from Priceline here at Thrifty. And I've heard kind of mixed things about renting a car here, but I love to drive, so I'm excited about that aspect. But we're gonna go get checked in and give you a bunch of tips on this one, on driving in Jordon, renting a car in Jordon, some places to go see. So you're in for a treat. Let's go see what happens here. So far so good. The reviews were pretty harsh, but maybe it's like a competition thing because they were super nice and upgraded us. And so one thing that you definitely want to do anywhere that you go, not just Jordon, is when you get a rental car, you record it top to bottom, every single part, and make sure that you don't have any scratches and stuff, because they will try to hit you at the end. And even if you have a credit card like I do that gives you the insurance, you still have to like pay for it and then wait for it to come back. It's kind of a pain in the butt. So what we're going to do now is we're going to record everything up and down, and then we're going to get our way to Madaba.
But before we got our rental car, we actually went to a cool site, and the thing about that is you don't actually need to take a rental car because there's a lot of public transport options, but we chose the most ecological option. One cool thing about Jordon is that they actually have Uber here. So you can get an Uber Green like this electric Volkswagen behind us and save a little carbon footprint.
And Jerash is a really amazing place. As a matter of fact, for a couple of days, it was my second favorite site ever. In 2 weeks, you get to see why. It's now number 3. But the architecture is really amazing, and you can start out in this really intact hippodrome where we decided we were gonna have a race.
Before you get into like the main part of the site, there's this little museum over to the side. Definitely make sure to take some time, look at the artifacts there, but really the highlight is just walking around and admiring this amazing architecture.
What really amazed me about this site was how intact it was. I've been to most of them in Italy now. It would be fair to say it's the most intact Roman ruins in the entire world.
Right, and the cool thing about it is so large. And so there's so much to learn. Luckily, there are some guides like our friend Mohammed who taught us a lot of really awesome things, and we got to walk around and just have a lot of fun.
Yeah, my favorite part was the singing rocks, but I'm not gonna steal our thunder for next week. You need to check this out. It is an engineering marvel and a whole lot of fun to bang on.
But after like 5 hours in that site, we needed to get home, get a rest so we can get our rental car early in the morning and start our road trip.
And holy Moses, was the next place really awesome. I've been hearing about this like my whole life. We went to Mount Nebo, and it is where Moses got to glimpse the promised land. Now, because of a couple of things, he didn't get to go. We did get to go, but the view from there was just awesome. On a really clear day, you can see miles and miles into Jerusalem and see the Dead Sea and everything. Definitely worth a little quick stop.
And then go into the church. They built like a modern church around where there used to be a really old church. So there's some awesome mosaics in there. There's a really impressive baptistry. And then you walk outside and there's a nice little garden, and it's just a nice little stop if you're in the area.
Our next stop on the way to the Dead Sea was a city called Madaba, and Madaba is famous for one particular really amazing mosaic, but I gotta tell you, all the other mosaics are awesome. There's a museum here that's UNESCO recognized, so we popped in there. A lot of great mosaics and things to see in there.
Yeah, I love walking around the museum, but I really wanted to find that mosaic that you're supposed to find in the church. So we headed off and went on our way, and we actually found something maybe even cooler. We found a place where they actually make the replica mosaics, and Dad got to even try to do it himself. and we got to buy a cool mosaic too, and that was a really awesome experience.
And the one that I got to contribute to was actually a replica of the one we were looking for, and it's going to be in an embassy in Amman. And so that was a really cool experience, but it did not compare to the really old one. What I'm talking about is right in a church in town, there's a mosaic that was made into a map of the entire Middle East.
I love all the colors that they use, and a lot of it's still really well preserved, so it was definitely worth the 1 JD. And our next leg starts with Bethany by the Jordon, and a lot of people are just kind of in a rush to get to the actual baptism place that they miss some of the really important spots along the way.
Yeah, the river has moved, so make sure, especially if you're on the Jordan side, which is the only side where you can see it, that you stop by this little like puddle in the ground, but that's actually where the river was and where they believe that Jesus was baptized. And I kind of self-baptized myself there, and in retrospect, I'm not sure whether that was more meaningful or the secondary experience, which was actually on my bucket list. We went to the actual river. This is the border of Jordan, so there's guards there and little areas you have to stay in. But I was really fortunate that we had an Italian preacher that was in our group, and so he agreed to baptize me, and it was one of those bucket list experiences, and I don't have a lot of experiences on my bucket list. I have 186 places to see and like 4 experiences, so very meaningful.
But it was time to hit the road, and luckily we got to our next stop, the Dead Sea, like right when the sun was going down, which was so beautiful.
And something that a lot of YouTubers don't talk about is there's always some sort of screw up, and we think we have lost our Dead Sea footage. So cross your fingers for us. It's due out in 2 weeks, and we're gonna do this like frantic search, but Dead Sea was really awesome.
Yeah, the Dead Sea not only is just beautiful, especially if you go near sunrise, but you know, you see all the videos of everybody floating, and you're like, oh, okay, so it's easy to float there. It is impossible to sink there. It's crazy. Like, there were points where I was like standing in position of attention and not moving at all.
I literally tried to dive down to the bottom because I saw something shiny and I couldn't get there. And then you come up and the salt gets in your eyes, and it is like being pepper sprayed, and I've been pepper sprayed. It is no fun. And then you rub this mud all over you and it's stingy. But the floating's really cool.
Yeah, no, and I think you definitely should do the mud thing. Some people think it's relaxing, but I don't know about that.
One of the best parts about driving around the world is you're not just going to a place, and there's all these little hidden treasures everywhere that you'd miss if you were just hopping on a bus or hopping on a train or taking an airplane. And I think that's really amazing, and I'm really glad we get this opportunity.
And the highlight of the entire trip for both of us was number 12 on my bucket list, but if I was writing it again, it might just be number 1 because it was better than Angkor Wat to me. Of course, I am talking about Petra. Oh man, I've been waiting for this my whole life.
And once you wind yourself through all of those canyons, the first thing you're gonna see is probably the most iconic. When you think of Petra, you think of the treasury, and the treasury is gorgeous. They got camels and stuff out front of it, so it really kind of fills in that vibe. You kind of feel like you're Indiana Jones hopping off your camel, getting ready to look for the Holy Grail.
Yeah, but the best view of it is one we're not sharing with you right now. You are going to have to come back in a couple of weeks and watch the Petra one to see the view from above, which is worth every minute. We actually walked about 32 miles of Petra between 2 days. If you are a history nerd, do not try to fit this in one day. There is so much to see, so much to do. We got off trail, and we're looking at all these old pieces of pottery that are just still laying along the sides. And we got to see where a bunch of people still live in the Nabatean ruins.
It was pretty amazing. And then of course we saw the churches and the tombs and all of the highlight areas, but I think that off-trail stuff might have been the highlight.
I'd go back tomorrow.
But then at night, you can either do the Petra at night, which is really cool experience, but it is a little expensive, and from what we heard, it might not be worth it. So our hotel manager actually told us of a place up on a hill behind the hotel where you can see the sunset over the city and you can hear the call to prayer, and it's a really awesome experience. I do suggest maybe waiting for it to be a little bit warmer because it was cold up there.
And early as possible the next morning, we suggest that you get over to Little Petra. Everybody says Little Petra is less crowded version of Petra. Number one, it's not quite as nice as Petra. Number two, there's less people there, but there were more crowds in our experience. And then use it as an excuse to go see another part of the site.
Yeah, so right behind Little Petra, there's this, I think it's like a 7-hour hike, and it'll take you to the monastery, or you can go somewhere and they will take you there on a Jeep, and that's what we decided to do. That's what we suggest doing because it is hot in the desert, so you don't want to be out there too long. But once you get there, you still have to hike a little bit. There's like a 45-minute hike from where they drop you off on the Jeep. And I really liked that. I think that it was really pretty and you got to experience some of the culture. But then after all of that, we finally make it to the monastery.
The monastery, I would say it's bigger and more grand than the treasury. And I think it's because a lot of people are too lazy to get there that the treasury is what the treasury is in everybody's mind, because the monastery was awesome. There were all these cool little enclaves around it where you could get these great pictures, and definitely don't miss it, even if you have to jump on a donkey because you only have one day. And after that, it's just a couple-hour drive from there to Mars. They've been trying all this work to get people to Mars, and we were able to do it. It was just on a car. It was awesome. Yeah. So we went to Wadi Rum, and Wadi Rum is not only named after rum, which is awesome, but it's just an epic place to stay.
Yeah, speaking of staying there, what you guys need to do is find one of the Bedouin camps. It's like the thing to do in Wadi Rum. We decided to stay at Wadi Rum Quiet Village. Really beautiful, quaint area. They have nice fires at night and you can have tea, and they even had a guy who was playing instruments. That was really cool. And then they had a traditional dinner, the zarb, and that was a really awesome cultural and culinary experience, but you guys are gonna have to watch the video to learn a little more about that.
Yeah, and shout out to them because they gave us a free sunset camel ride, which, while it was extremely uncomfortable, was one of the highlights of the whole trip.
Yeah, and if you don't want to go be a camel, what you can do is get a Jeep ride. And we actually met this guide kind of in a interesting scenario. You'll have to learn a little more about that from the video. But
let's just say don't drive through the desert.
Yeah, don't drive through the desert, especially not in a two-wheel drive little car. Anyways, it's a really cool experience. You're way up on the roof and you get to see some of the highlights of the desert, and it's a lot faster than a camel for sure. And overall, Wadi Rum is a can't miss spot when you come to Jordan. It's like, did you even go to Jordan if you didn't go?
So something interesting that you don't see everywhere is that there is no ATM in all of Wadi Rum. You have to come all the way out to Joe Petroleum. It's a 15-minute drive, and it supposedly had an ATM, but it does not anymore. So you can give the guy who runs the gas station your credit card and run your credit card, and for 8% fee, he will give you cash. And it's better than having to drive another 45 minutes to get to an ATM. Plus, because we're on the bonus, we actually just got 30% back in rewards. So not horrible, but very interesting, and it'll probably make you uncomfortable. So just bring cash whenever you're in like one of the main cities, because it'll be a lot more convenient, but maybe a little less adventurous and a little bit less of a culture trip. And cash in hand, it was time to head to our last stop on our Jordan trip. and it is a really cool Crusader castle. But for me, the highlight is its location. This is the Levant Valley. It's part of the Fertile Crescent and has a really strong argument that this may have been the first place that people practiced agriculture. It's possible that this place was the site of civilization's beginning.
The castle itself was pretty nice. They had really cool architecture. I liked some of the like Ottoman shaped archways, and we walked around there a little bit, checked out the museum, but we were getting pretty hungry and we figured it was time to maybe try to find a place to have a nice picnic.
And so we climbed up the side of the ravine there, and there were all these caves, and they were Nabatean caves and caves that had been used maybe all the way back to the inception of civilization. We had a picnic there. We did some exploring. There was some good and some bad with the exploring, which you're gonna have to watch that video to hear about.
And I hope you enjoyed this little like sampler platter, because we're going to be exploring like all of Jordan and all of these sites over the next month or maybe even more. So stay tuned for that, because we saw some really amazing things.
Yeah, this was a trip of a lifetime, and we are glad to get to share it with you. And I hope that you find inspiration from it and you find yourself planning a trip to Jordan. And as always, find yourself on a journey.